Okay, I should start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. I suppose we should start right at the very beginning. So, how did your love of theatre begin?
Well, I started dancing when I was 18 months old, and I started walking like 2 days before that and got put in dance class and fell in love with that as an art form. And then it kind of spiraled out from there. I started singing and acting, and I like to say that kids will tell you who they're supposed to be at a very early age. And I
Hmm.
think I shouted with all of me at my family that I was going to do some kind of theatrical something.
Hmm.
And then I met Jimmy Contos, who is the director I've worked with a lot and uh, who I'm doing the Fringe Festival with.
Hmm.
In college, he was a grad student and I was an undergrad. And when you find your people, you
Hmm.
find them and
Just
decide to work together. It took us 10 years to figure it out, but he's actually moved to a whole new state to do what I do. And
oh.
we've worked together for the last 5 years, kind of
Hmm.
consecutive. So.
So was that like all forms of dance, jazz, tap, ballet, the whole shebang? Wow.
The whole thing, ballroom and everything. So
Oh, I did a little bit of tap, and I know that was intense on its
yeah,
own, but I can't imagine doing them all. So is that kind of how you kind of ended up in this choreographer role for the artist workshop? Is that how that
yeah,
journey?
yeah. In college, when I was working with Jimmy, I was in the musical he was directing,
Hmm.
and he needed a choreographer. He'd seen me work and thought we could collaborate really well. And I think I'd already choreographed before, but I think working with him on that process really spurred the idea that I could both be a performer still as well as work on the other side of the table. And I have kind of 50-50 spent my
Hmm.
career doing both performance and
Wow.
choreography.
Oh,
So,
that's amazing. But on top of that, I've also read that there is aerial elements to these shows that are coming up, and that obviously, as the choreographer, you're sort of the lead of putting all that together. So how did you don't just fall into aerial arts? How did you end up in that sort of area?
you do not. I was really good friends with a lighting designer in college,
Mm,
and he kind of just came up to me and said, "I really want to light an aerial piece.
mm.
So go take class." And I said, and he said, "There's no one else that's going to do this for me. So I bought you a package of classes, and I think you'd really enjoy it.
Mm.
Go do this thing." And I came back from that package of classes with more bruises than I can possibly
Mhm.
imagine, but also this like need to do more of it and get
Mm.
better at it. So I kind of ran with it. We actually did not get to do a piece that he lit until about 8 years later, when we both lived
Right.
in New York. But he is going to be our lighting designer for Fringe, and we've worked together. I kind of say, as a choreographer and as an aerialist, the two most important things to me are my lights and my drums.
Mm.
That's kind of the heart and soul of what I do choreographically. So he is kind of an essential part of why I do aerial and also how I like to choreograph.
Yeah,
So.
not just the sort of the reason you started, but also why it keeps going. He's
Mhm.
still supporting you even now, which is fantastic. You mentioned earlier the artist workshop, but what is the artist workshop?
Artist Workshop is a company that started by Jimmy Contos, a way for community to be able to access theater, to be able to tell stories in non-traditional ways. And now, from going from a small place of just in Tallahassee, Florida, we have a global entity. We have a chapter here in Thomasville, Georgia, in Tallahassee, Florida, in the UK, as well as in the Netherlands. And that's where Jimmy is located right now. So he's in Harlem.
Yeah, wow. And obviously, have you been to the Fringe before? Have you performed at the Fringe?
I have not. This will be my first
Oh,
time.
this is my first time attending. Obviously, I hope to bump into you up there. But obviously, getting the announcement that you are heading to the Fringe, the UK's biggest theatre festival, if not the world's biggest, what was that moment finding out like for you?
Uh, well, my first kind of reaction was, I'm so excited. How do I make this happen?
Mm.
And then it was, oh gosh, it's happening the first month of school. And it was really, how do I make this happen? Uh, the most amazing thing about my job is they are very supportive of me staying active in the field so
Hmm.
that I can be the best for my students as well. And my students, some of them know already and some of them don't, but they're very excited to hear about my experience in Scotland and to kind of hear how the whole Fringe Festival goes. I have seen a lot of Fringe Festivals here in the States, but I
Hmm.
have not been able to go to any across the pond. So I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting way to showcase my choreography on a different scale
Mm.
than before.
Obviously, you mentioned there, obviously, how the school that you work in enjoys the fact that you are sort of actively pursuing. And obviously, it's the same with me, obviously, doing all this stuff and reviews and writing as an English teacher. That I think that shows the kids that you aren't just, I'm there to teach you, done. It's this is something I'm passionate about, and I want you to pursue if that's something you want to do as well.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing way to stay active as an artist teaching.
Mm,
And I think it's a great way to also pass on your knowledge. I don't know, I always say pay it forward is the best way
hmm.
to show not only your art, but other people why
Yeah.
it's important to you. And being able to balance both of those is very important to me.
Hmm. So on top of it being your first Fringe experience, you're not just taking one show, you are working on, I believe it's at least two. Yeah. So does that add pressure doing two shows at the ta same time?
It does, but at the same time, I'm one of those folks that I always say I'm pulling a TL because that's what my friends call me, which means that I just have overcommitted myself as usual. I think it's really good for my brain because they're so different, the two
Hmm.
shows,
Hmm.
that I feel like it's going to challenge me, but it's also going to allow me to explore two versions of what my choreography can look like because one is very bluegrass,
Hmm.
uh, got Shakespearean text involved in it, and the other one is very burlesque, punk rock, alternative.
Hmm.
And so I think it'll also help me not get stuck in a rut of what my choreography always can look like and
Hmm.
more challenge me to find the interesting nuance of the two spectrums of
Hmm.
spectrum of my choreography.
Hmm. Totally. Obviously, you mentioned the two shows there. Obviously, I'm going to run through them sort of separately now. But sort of what drew you into Bottom's Dream? What made you go, oh, I want to be a part of this?
So, Bottom's Dream is interesting to me because Midsummer is my favorite Shakespeare play.
Hmm.
I say that one version of my choreography is very sprightly and
Hmm.
fairy-like, and it lends itself toward taking the art to new heights where you
Hmm.
can use aerial. I have a really beautiful moon apparatus that I think we're going to end up using in the show
Wow.
that it's that dreamer's land. It's something that I think even my students here can connect to because it's for audiences of all
Hmm.
ages. And I think it's a really cool way to explore one specific journey within a show that's already been made
Hmm.
and also explore Shakespeare's text, but in a new creative way.
Hmm. I've only recently seen A Midsummer's Night Dream, actually. Big fan of Shakespeare, but that's a play that I hadn't seen seen much of before. So,
Wow.
yeah, which is very exciting, and obviously, I hopefully I'll get to see it when I come to Edinburgh as well. But why do you think the character of Bottom is so important to the show? Why is he getting his own little spin-off?
Well, I feel like it's an underexplored
Mm,
part of the show. So it's a way for us to kind of take an interesting character and dig deeper into the motivations,
hmm.
uh, and understand that I don't know. There's this Australian word called sonder, and it means that you understand that you're not the only one that has a complex and complete
Mm,
life, but everyone around you has a complex and complete life. And I think I wanted to when I heard Jimmy's idea to practice Sonder on
mm,
Bond. Like he's not the most liked character in Midsummer either, and kind of makes some dumb decisions, but why? And
hmm.
kind of exploring that and
Mm,
seeing what that's like. So I thought it was a fun spin on a character that's not always your
mm.
go-to favorite.
But he was my favorite character when I saw it in my adaptation, but purely
Oh, good.
because it's just he's so wild. The depiction that I saw was so sort of obviously the normal plot points that he goes through are insane already, but such a big character. So
Yeah.
when you got involved with the project, how did you go about, obviously I don't need to give too much away, but building your choreography into a show that doesn't historically have dance elements in it? How did you go about designing what you wanted your performers to do?
So we I am a huge component worker with music.
Hmm.
So I'm working with our composer. We had a playlist that Manny and Jimmy put together, and it was just kind of the mood and an essence. And obviously at Fringe, we're bringing our own music and things to it. So I don't know exactly what that sounds like until we have everyone together. So I was moving off of mood and essence and the idea, and I kind of bring phrases and ideas together
Mm,
to then kind of set on dancers, feel what it feels like on their bodies, and then we weave it into the storytelling because
mm,
I believe that when you're telling a story, the movement should come
mm,
from a natural place and come from pushing the story forward rather than just being flashy dance for no
mm,
reason. So that's kind of where I come from. I come from a very naturalistic, pedestrian kind of movement initially,
mhm.
and then it get more grand from
Yeah,
there as
totally.
we take it here.
You obviously already talked about how there's sort of these sort of magical elements of Midsummer's Night Dream and Bottom's Dream. So was that kind of how the aerial elements got introduced, or was that always part of the plan?
I'm pretty sure that's why we wanted to do it, was the
Mm.
magical elements. However, Jimmy knows that that's my specialty. We have done 4 shows together where I have put Ariel in the show, and even ones that you don't think Ariel belong, I can kind of sneak it in there in a fun way. For instance, Footloose, we did have Ariel work in Footloose, which
Wow.
not a traditional Ariel show.
No.
But you can in the when we were in the gra not the graveyard, oh my goodness, the garage scene where
Mhm.
you're just out working on the cars, we had some liras stuck in things and we had some cool, it looked like they were falling off of
Yeah.
stuff, doing movement there. So I
Ah.
think it's a really fun way to, like I said,
Mm.
take new heights, but never have to make it about
Mm.
the.
Does the sort of logistics of having to bring over the equipment you need for aerial, apologies, that's not something that I'm an expert in, but does that add pressure to you organizing the show?
Oh, absolutely. I am in a bunch of different chats right now with folks on if we can rent things while we're over there rather than me shipping everything,
Mm.
whose house we can ship them to early and all kinds of stuff. So it's definitely a coordination, currently scary dream,
Mm.
but I do think it's something that's going to come together really
Mm.
nicely. The good thing is that art is very prevalent in the UK, and
Mm-hmm.
so there are places we can rent from if we can't ship it over. So
Hmm. You mentioned earlier there's 2 shows, and obviously we've talked about Bottom's Dream so far, but you are also taking the Meeples, which is a
we
very different show. So where did the idea of the Meeples come from first?
I think there was 2 points that kind of came together. There was Jimmy and I want to do an aerial show,
Hmm.
and we really liked the idea of this burlesque alternative underground.
Hmm.
And Jimmy loves puppetry
Hmm.
and the Muppets. And those two things come together.
Hmm.
And that is where it was born in his brain. And then I kind of got to run with it with the
Hmm.
idea of the Muppets have lost their show
Hmm.
and they're all trying to make ends meet. And they all turn to a little bit of a darker
Hmm.
version of how to make ends meet. And therefore, you get that burlesque underground alternative kind of feel to it.
Hmm. And so obviously the idea of puppets is normally reserved for children. It is traditionally sort of a children's based medium. So what is it
Mhm.
like taking something that is supposed to be so like innocent and pure and taking it to the worlds of burlesque and underground performance?
I think it comes to this idea of working with dichotomies, right?
Hmm.
You see innocent and burlesque, and we talk about puppets and Ariel, and those don't necessarily go together. And the music and the Muppets don't
Hmm.
necessarily fit in our brains. So I think we really were that counterpoint was really
Hmm.
important to us, and I think that is really exciting as a choreographer of always finding the
Mm,
fun and the not expected
mm,
move in this show. So I'm very excited to bring this cast together. We have a really strong cast from all over the world coming together for this one, and really strong comedians. So there will be a lot of
mm.
that, and then some aerial, of course, and we have musicians that are live in it. So
Oh.
we want it to feel
Mm,
almost improvised while being fully
mm,
planned and ready, like a concert also within a show.
Hmm. So obviously, being the choreographer of the show, it must have been difficult considering that puppets are quite can either be take up a full hand or I don't know exactly how it works within your show, but they can be quite cumbersome. So how do you sort of fit that around the added bulk of a puppet?
So not all of the show is going to be puppeteered. So
Okay.
the idea of it being puppets come to life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Ah.
then we have just really strong
Mm.
puppeteers in as the cast. So it's something that's very natural to them. And it's going to allow for us to use, yes, your hand is lost, but
Mm.
being able to fully embody the character. And then there's some characters that might not, as
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a real apparatus, you obviously have to have your hands
Mm-hmm.
available to you. So full embodiment while also having puppetry, and it's balancing that idea of who is doing what, when, and for how long.
Mm. Obviously, I read online that obviously I learned that this is more of a darker show than what we would expect from sort of puppets. And one of the inclusions is the idea of ice, which is obviously a very controversial thing that's going on that maybe the UK viewers or listeners might not be fully aware of. So why did the team believe it was important to bring that into the show?
Well, over here it's very real
Mhm.
daily, and I think Jimmy really wanted to bring to light both something we loved and something that we're fighting
Mhm.
against. Uh, and it's something that everyone in the cast is very passionate about making sure inclusion is important, about making sure that people feel safe, and about making statements
Mhm.
that are bold about what art can do
Mhm.
in a more political realm.
Totally. So we are coming to the end of my questions, but I do have a couple more. So, where can people stay up to date with you and the Artist Workshop? Where can they stay up to date?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a website that
Hmm.
is awonstage.com. We do a lot of regular updates on there. We're doing a cabaret night next week, and it's all being updated on the website. We also are on socials, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook,
Hmm.
and it just be Artist Workshop, and I believe that's it on
Oh,
all of the
amazing.
underscorings in there.
Mm.
Uh, give those links to you as well.
Yeah.
We keep our Instagram very updated, and then my Instagram is TL Steele 1. So that's how you can keep up with me personally. I post a lot about my choreography, both for Fringe Festival, and I just did a production of Chicago. So keeping
Mm.
everybody on all the theater we're doing.
Oh, fantastic. I'll put the links in the comments below so people can scroll down and click away. But my final question is, what advice do you have for young performers and young creatives looking to do what you do?
This is one of my favorite questions. I think learning when to say yes and no is very
Mhm.
important. I think that knowing how to say no is a very important skill because your time is precious, your time is important, and you deserve to be paid for your
Mhm.
time. You need to be paid
Totally.
for it. So, knowing when to say yes to opportunities that might be scary or might not have an exact end date.
Hmm.
For instance, the reason I'm going to Fringe Fest is because I said yes in college a lot to
Hmm.
kind of scary opportunities that brought me to the right people. I also think my other biggest piece of advice is hold on to the people that you like to collaborate with
Hmm.
and invest time in ideating about what you can do with those people because an idea from 10 years ago is coming
Mm.
to fruition at the Fringe Fest. And I think that's so important is people and knowing when to say yes and no to protect your time, but also provide opportunity in the future.
Oh, fantastic. So that is all my questions. But as I said, I will put the links in the comments below so people can scroll down and click away. I said at the beginning, but I'll end the same way. Thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. Obviously, I hope to bump into you at the Fringe. It would be lovely. But I wish you the best of luck, and I shall speak to you soon.
Hey, have a great one. Thank you.